Classical music isn't for ghetto kids. Professor Malcolm Whitmore's words cut through Eastwood Academy's concert hall. His expensive suit and gold watch gleam under crystal chandeliers as he stares down at 12-year-old Devin Carter. Devin grips his father's cracked violin case. 30 people watch from marble seats. Students snicker. Board members lean back, entertained. Maybe try rap instead? The laughter is immediate and cruel. Devin's borrowed shirt hangs loose. His taped-together violin case looks pathetic against the polished floors. Whitmore adjusts his tie, savoring the moment. We maintain standards here. Everyone sees the same ending. The poor black kid gets humiliated. The rich white professor wins. Nothing changes. But Devin Carter has 8 minutes to flip this script. 8 minutes to make Whitmore choke on his words. 8 minutes to prove that talent doesn't check your address before it chooses you. Have you ever been dismissed as worthless, only to shock them into silence? The story begins 3 hours earlier in a world 15 miles but light years away from Eastwood Academy's marble halls. Devin Carter's alarm clock screams at 5 a.m. in the cramped 2-bedroom apartment on Detroit's east side. The radiator coughs like an old man with pneumonia, rattling pipes that haven't been replaced since the Carter administration. Water stains map the ceiling like forgotten countries, each brown splotch telling stories of winter storms and summer humidity that seeps through walls thin as hope. The apartment smells like instant coffee and dreams deferred. Mrs. Johnson's television bleeds through the walls, morning news about violence and politics. The Hernandez baby cries upstairs, footsteps pacing wooden floors at all hours. Somewhere down the hall, a couple argues in Spanish about rent money that doesn't exist. But in the narrow space between the kitchen and living room, where normal families might put a dining table, magic happens every morning. Devin stands with his father's violin, bow poised above worn strings like a conductor about to summon thunder. The instrument tells its own story through every scratch, dent, and battle scar. The varnish has faded from deep amber to honey brown, worn smooth by decades of calloused fingers. The fingerboard shows grooves where 10,000 scales have been practiced, each repetition carving deeper into the ebony. A hairline crack runs along the back, sealed with wood glue and prayers that it holds together one more day. His left hand finds the familiar positions with muscle memory earned through countless hours. First position, third, fifth. The bow moves across strings that cost $40 to replace, money his family measures in missed meals and unpaid bills. But the sound that emerges fills their cramped world with something larger than physics should allow. Soul. Devin closes his eyes and plays Bach's partita number 2, the same piece that will either save or destroy him in 3 hours. His intonation wavers on the high notes. His vibrato needs work that only expensive teachers can provide. But something else lives in the music. Something that can't be taught in conservatories or bought with trust funds. Something that comes from playing Pachelbel's canon while sirens wail outside. Something that emerges when you pour your heart into 4 strings because it's the only place left that makes sense. Baby, you're gonna wake the whole building. Claudia Carter emerges from the bathroom, hospital scrubs already wrinkled from a closet that's too small for everything it holds. At 38, she carries herself like someone who's fought every battle twice and won most of them through sheer stubbornness. Her hands are cracked from industrial cleaners that eat skin like acid. Her back aches from mopping floors in hospital wings that stretch for miles. Dark circles under her eyes tell stories of double shifts and dreams that don't pay rent. But when she watches her son play, her eyes shine with something unbreakable. Hope. Sorry, Mama. I just wanted to practice before school. She pours coffee from a pot that's older than Devin, black liquid that could strip paint but keeps her moving through 16-hour days. The kitchen table wobbles on 3 good legs, the 4th one shimmed with folded magazines. Bills stack like accusations beside a mason jar labeled Devin's Music Fund in her careful handwriting, mostly empty except for crumpled ones and loose change that adds up slower than dreams fade. The walls around them hold their history. A framed photo of Devon's father, Marcus Carter, holding his violin on their wedding day. Claudia's nursing degree, mounted in a frame from the dollar store. A reminder of dreams interrupted when Marcus had his heart attack. Medical bills that consumed their savings. Funeral costs that devoured what remained. 3 years of starting over from nothing. You nervous about today? Devon sets the violin in its case with the ceremony of a priest handling holy relics. The purple velvet lining is worn thin, soft as skin from decades of use. The bow needs new hair that costs more than groceries. But this instrument carried his father's dreams for 23 years before passing them to his son like a sacred inheritance. Little bit. That's the understatement of his 12-year existence. Today is the scholarship audition at Eastwood Academy, Detroit's most prestigious music conservatory, where annual tuition exceeds most people's salaries. Full scholarship means private lessons with world-class teachers, master classes with visiting artists, summer programs in Vienna, where Mozart walked the same streets, the kind of opportunity that comes once in a generation, if it comes at all. Claudia sits across from her son at the tilted table, her scrubs smelling like disinfectant and determination. She works the night shift cleaning surgical floors, then comes home to make breakfast and send Devon to school. Most days she sleeps while he practices. Most nights she works while he dreams. Tell me what Daddy used to say. Devon's voice steadies, drawing strength from words worn smooth by repetition. Music doesn't come from the violin. It comes from here. He touches his heart. And here, he touches his head. It comes from who you are, not what you own. That's right. And what else? Don't let anyone convince you that your music isn't good enough. Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. She reaches across the table and squeezes his hand. Her fingers are rough from bleach and broken dreams, but her grip is steady as stone. Eastwood Academy's got marble floors and trust fund kids with instruments that cost more than cars, but they don't have what you have. What's that? Fire. Hunger. Music that comes from somewhere real. Devon looks around their apartment, really looks at it. The peeling linoleum that curls at the edges. The second-hand furniture was bought with layaway payments. The windows that don't quite close, letting Detroit's bitter winter seep through gaps like whispered warnings. The refrigerator that hums too loud, and the shower that runs cold every morning. This is what he's trying to escape. But it's also what forged him. Every morning before school, he practices scales while most kids sleep. Every afternoon, he studies music theory from library books with pages soft from handling. Every evening, he plays along to YouTube videos on a laptop held together with electrical tape and hope. His classmates at Jefferson Middle School don't understand. They make jokes about that weird kid with the violin. Some days, he eats lunch alone in the music room, violin case beside him like his only friend. Other days, he skips lunch entirely to practice in the empty auditorium where the acoustics make his father's violin sound almost expensive. Devon has seen something his classmates haven't. He's witnessed what happens when music meets desperation, when technique serves something larger than showing off, when a $40 pawn shop violin sings like a Stradivarius because the hands holding it have everything to prove and nothing to lose. Professor Malcolm Whitmore commands Eastwood Academy like a general surveying conquered territory. At 58, he moves through the marble corridors with the calculated precision of someone who's never questioned his right to occupy any space he enters. His silver hair is styled with the kind of perfection that requires weekly appointments at Detroit's most expensive salon. His navy blazer bears the Academy's gold crest, a symbol that opens doors across 3 continents. When his Italian leather shoes click against the polished floors, conversations stop. Students straighten their spines. Faculty members nod with deference that borders on worship. This morning, Whitmore reviews scholarship applications in his corner office overlooking the Academy's sculpture garden. The room screams authority. floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with first editions, walls covered with photographs of him beside world-renowned conductors, a Steinway baby grand that cost more than most people's houses. His desk holds 3 applications for today's auditions. 2 are from students at exclusive preparatory schools, children of doctors and lawyers with trust funds and summer homes. The 3rd makes his lip curl with distaste. Devin Carter, Jefferson Middle School, single mother, custodial work, East Side address that might as well be a different planet. "Another charity case," he mutters, paper-clipping Devin's school photograph to financial aid forms that tell their own story. Free lunch program, Medicaid insurance, father deceased. The application screams poverty from every line. Whitmore has built his reputation on excellence. Graduated first in his class from Juilliard. Studied in Vienna under masters whose names grace concert halls worldwide. His students have gone on to join major symphonies, win international competitions, grace the stages of Carnegie Hall and Lincoln Center. He doesn't produce these results by accepting mediocrity. The office door opens without a knock, a privilege reserved for exactly one person. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan, the Academy's founder, enters carrying her own coffee. At 72, she moves with the energy of someone half her age and twice as determined. "Malcolm, ready for this morning's auditions?" "As ready as one can be." He gestures toward Devin's application with the enthusiasm reserved for root canals. "Though I'm not sure why we continue this outreach charade." These scholarship auditions waste everyone's time. Dr. Morgan settles into the leather chair across from his desk. Her eyes, sharp as surgical instruments, scan the applications. "That charade has produced some of our finest graduates." "Name one." "Sandra Liu, full scholarship from Chinatown, now principal second violin with the Boston Symphony." Whitmore waves dismissively. "Exception that proves the rule." These inner-city students arrive without proper training. No foundation. They play with emotion over technique. It takes years to correct their bad habits, if it's even possible. He opens Devin's file and reads aloud with theatrical disdain. "Submitted recording made on iPhone. No formal teacher listed. Self-taught through library books and internet videos. His laugh could freeze champagne." "We're not running a community center, Elizabeth." Dr. Morgan's silence carries weight. She founded Eastwood Academy 40 years ago with a simple philosophy. Talent recognizes no economic boundaries. But boards of directors and donor expectations have slowly shifted the Academy's mission toward safer territories. Students whose parents can afford full tuition without scholarships. Families who attend fundraising galas and write generous checks. The boy chose box partita number 2. Whitmore continues, not noticing her expression. "Ambitious for someone of his background. I'll be curious to see how he handles the technical demands." His tone suggests he expects spectacular failure. "Perhaps you might be surprised." Unlikely. These students confuse passion with precision. They think feeling substitutes for training. He closes Devin's file with finality. "I'll give him points for courage, but this piece has humbled conservatory graduates with decades of proper instruction." Whitmore stands and adjusts his silk tie. Italian, naturally. His reflection in the window shows a man comfortable with power, confident in his assessments, certain that the natural order of things will be preserved. Students like Devin Carter serve a purpose. They make the Academy look inclusive without actually threatening its standards. "Besides," he continues, "the board members attending today's auditions expect to see our usual caliber of applicant. We can't have them questioning the Academy's reputation based on charity experiments." Dr. Morgan rises from her chair, something dangerous flickering in her eyes. "Malcolm, sometimes the most extraordinary music comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes a violin is just a violin, regardless of who's holding it." She heads toward the door, then pauses. "For your sake, I hope you're right." Because if you're wrong about this boy, everyone in that hall will remember it. The door closes with a soft click that somehow sounds like a warning. Whitmore returns to his desk, straightening papers that don't need straightening. In 30 years of teaching, he's developed an instinct for identifying true talent. These scholarship students arrive full of dreams, but lacking the fundamental training that excellence requires. Today will be no different. Devin Carter will play his ambitious Bach piece, struggle with the technical passages, and learn that good intentions don't substitute for proper breeding and education. Some lessons, Whitmore believes, are best learned publicly. The audition hall at Eastwood Academy could intimidate angels. Marble columns rise 30 feet toward a coffered ceiling painted with scenes from musical history. Crystal chandeliers cast perfect light across rows of velvet seats, each one worth more than Devin's family pays in monthly rent. The stage, built for full orchestras, stretches like an ocean of polished hardwood beneath a golden proscenium arch. But today, this temple of music holds only 30 people scattered across 200 seats like islands of judgment. Devin enters through massive oak doors that whisper wealth with every hinge movement. His borrowed dress shirt hangs loose on his thin frame, the sleeves rolled up to reveal wrists that seem too delicate to hold a violin. His black shoes, his only pair of dress shoes, squeak against marble floors so polished they reflect the chandeliers like mirror pools. He carries his father's violin case like a shield, knuckles white with tension that has nothing to do with nerves and everything to do with survival instinct. The audience watches his entrance with the focused attention of predators sizing up prey. Faculty members lean forward in the front row, notebooks open, pens poised to document what everyone expects will be a brief, uncomfortable display. Behind them sit advanced students, mostly white, all wealthy, their expensive instruments resting in cases that cost more than Devin's mother makes in 6 months. In the back row, board members check phones and whisper among themselves. These are Detroit's cultural elite. Symphony patrons, art collectors, people who measure musical taste in tax-deductible donations and society page photographs. Professor Whitmore occupies center stage like a king holding court. He stands behind a mahogany podium, silver hair perfectly styled, navy blazer pressing sharp as a knife edge. When he speaks, his voice carries the kind of authority that comes from never being questioned. Ladies and gentlemen, our final audition of the morning, Devin Carter from Jefferson Middle School. The pause that follows stretches like taffy. Devin feels 30 pairs of eyes cataloging everything about him. The too big shirt, the scuffed shoes, the violin case held together with tape and desperation. Mr. Carter has chosen to perform Bach's Partita number 2 in D minor. Whitmore's tone suggests this is either very amusing or deeply inappropriate. An ambitious selection for someone of his musical background. Nervous laughter ripples through the advanced students. One girl with a perfect blonde bob and a violin case that costs more than Devin's family car whispers something to her friend. They both giggle behind manicured hands. Devin sets his case on the piano bench and opens it with a ceremony that feels sacred in this secular temple. The purple velvet lining, worn thin from decades of use, seems to glow under the chandeliers. His father's violin rests in its familiar position, strings catching light like spider silk. Whitmore notices the instrument and his eyebrows rise with theatrical concern. "Is that your violin, Mr. Carter?" The question lands like a physical blow. Every person in the hall focuses on the weathered instrument with its faded varnish and visible crack along the back. Compared to the pristine instruments around the room, Devin's violin looks like a homeless person at a charity gala. "Yes, sir. It was my father's." "I see." Whitmore's smile could freeze summer rain. "Well, I'm afraid we maintain certain standards here at Eastwood. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in our beginner program. They have more appropriate instruments for students of your experience level." The insult hits Devin like ice water. Around the hall, board members exchange glances that speak volumes. Faculty members lean back in their chairs, already writing their assessments. Advanced students whisper with barely concealed amusement. Dr. Morgan sits in the third row, her face carved from stone, watching Whitmore with eyes that could cut glass. Devon lifts his violin from its case, feeling the familiar weight in his hands. The wood is warm, alive, carrying the echo of every song his father ever played, every lullaby, every scale, every dream deferred but not abandoned. "Thank you for your concern, Professor Whitmore." Devon's voice carries across the marble hall with surprising steadiness. "But this violin has music to share." Whitmore's smile turns predatory. "Of course, if you insist on attempting the Bach. Though I should warn you, Mr. Carter, this piece has humbled students with far more training than you've had access to." He pauses for effect, letting the words sink into every witness. "Are you certain you want to risk such public disappointment?" The challenge hangs in the perfumed air like a gauntlet thrown at dawn. 30 people hold their breath, waiting for the poor kid from the projects to back down, apologize, maybe ask for something simpler, something more suitable for his station. Devon positions the violin against his shoulder, feeling his father's presence in the worn wood. The bow finds the strings with practiced ease. He looks directly at Professor Whitmore, then at the sea of skeptical faces, then at the empty balcony where angels of music might sit in judgment. "I'd like to play the Bach, please." The silence that follows will haunt that hall for generations. Time suspends itself in crystal chandeliers and marble silence. Devon stands alone on the stage, 30 pairs of eyes boring into him like laser beams, his father's violin trembling slightly in hands that suddenly feel too small for the weight they're carrying. The borrowed shirt sticks to his back with nervous sweat. His throat feels dry as desert sand. Somewhere in the back rows, a board member coughs with impatience. Professor Whitmore's smile cuts through the air like a blade waiting to fall. This is the moment every underdog faces. The crossroads where dreams either die quiet deaths or explode into something larger than the dreamer ever imagined. Devon's mind races backward through 3 years of memory. His father's calloused hands guided his fingers across the fingerboard. "Son, your music doesn't come from the violin. It comes from here." Marcus Carter's voice, warm as summer rain, touching his heart. "And here," touching his forehead. "It comes from who you are, not what you own." He thinks of his mother, working the graveyard shift at Detroit General, mopping floors while dreams sleep in hospital beds. Claudia Carter, who gave up her nursing career to pay medical bills and funeral costs. Who works double shifts so her son can chase impossible dreams with a $40 violin and library books. He remembers every classmate who laughed at the weird kid with the fancy music. Every teacher who suggested he try something more realistic. Every neighbor who shook their heads at the classical music floating from apartment 4B, wondering why that Carter boy didn't play something normal. But mostly, he remembers the first time he heard Bach's Partita No. 2. Sitting in the cheapest seats at the Detroit Symphony, so high up the musicians looked like moving dots. The violin solo began, and something shifted in Devon's chest. Something clicked into place like a key finding its lock. "That's gonna be you someday," his father whispered. 2 weeks later, his father was dead. But the promise remained, carved into Devon's heart like scripture. Now, on this stage, under these lights, facing these doubts, Devon Carter makes his choice. His spine straightens. The borrowed shirt no longer looks too big. It looks purposeful. The weathered violin case becomes a treasure chest. His father's instrument settles against his shoulder like it's coming home. Devon looks directly at Professor Whitmore, his young voice cutting through the oppressive silence with quiet dignity that surprises everyone, including himself. "My father taught me that respect is earned through music, not money. I'd like to play Bach, please." The transformation is instant and complete. The nervous 12-year-old disappears. In his place stands a musician with something to prove and nothing left to lose. Professor Whitmore's smile falters for just a moment. That moment changes everything. Devon positions his father's violin with the ceremony of a priest raising communion wine. The hall falls into cathedral silence. 30 people holding their breath, crystal chandeliers casting perfect light across marble floors that have witnessed 40 years of musical excellence, columns standing witness to what everyone believes will be a spectacular failure. His left hand finds the neck of the violin with intimate familiarity born from 3 years of daily practice in cramped spaces. Fingers settle into position like puzzle pieces clicking home, calluses earned from steel strings meeting flesh in apartments where heat is optional and dreams are essential. The bow, strung with horsehair that's seen better decades, hovers above worn strings that have sung 1,000 lullabies and carried a dead man's unfulfilled aspirations. Professor Whitmore checks his gold watch with theatrical impatience. Board members shift in velvet seats, already composing the gentle rejection letters that will follow this predictable disappointment. Advanced students grip their expensive instrument cases, waiting for confirmation that talent requires trust funds and summer homes in the Hamptons. The first note emerges. Not perfect, not polished in the way conservatory training demands, but pure in a way that expensive instruments and climate-controlled practice rooms cannot teach. A simple G, sustained and true, cuts through the perfumed air like morning light through cathedral-stained glass. The sound carries something indefinable, authenticity distilled into vibration, truth translated into molecules of air that penetrate marble walls and frozen expectations. Conversations die mid-syllable. Phone screens go dark like embarrassed witnesses. Even Professor Whitmore's smirk falters as the note sustains longer than physics should allow, filling acoustic space designed for full orchestras with a presence that seems larger than the boy creating it. Devon begins the Allemande, the opening dance of Bach's Partita number, 2 in D minor. His fingers move across the worn fingerboard with surprising speed and mathematical precision. This is music learned not from leather-bound editions in temperature-controlled libraries, but from YouTube videos watched on laptops held together with electrical tape and determination. Scales practiced in hallways narrow as coffins, while gunshots punctuated practice sessions like percussion from Hell's own symphony. The melody unfolds like architectural origami, complex, mathematical, perfect in its geometrical beauty. But Devon doesn't approach it like engineering. He plays it like poetry written in a language older than words, each phrase breathing with organic rhythm that follows heartbeats instead of digital metronomes. His bow technique, self-taught from library books with pages soft as tissue from countless desperate fingers, produces a tone that shouldn't emerge from instruments held together with wood glue and prayers. In the front row, faculty members exchange glances heavy with implications. Dr. Richards, who studied at Juilliard under masters whose names grace concert halls worldwide, leans forward with expressions normally reserved for natural phenomena. Professor Carter, principal second violin with the Detroit Symphony for 15 years, grips her program with knuckles white as piano keys. This isn't what they expected. This isn't what anyone dared imagine. The Corrente movement begins. Bach's Italian dance transformed into liquid motion that seems to flow directly from Devon's nervous system into acoustic reality. Where classically trained students focus on mechanical perfection, hitting every note with Swiss watch precision, Devon breathes life into phrases that most violinists treat like mathematical equations. His vibrato isn't textbook perfect, wavering slightly on sustained notes, but it pulses with authentic emotion that makes conservatory training seem sterile by comparison. His dynamics don't follow conservative interpretation passed down through generations of careful teachers. They follow instincts honed by necessity, creating crescendos that serve the music's emotional architecture rather than academic tradition. When the melody climbs toward heaven, Devon's bow pressure increases naturally, organically, like flowers turning toward sunlight. When phrases descend into darker territories, his touch becomes whisper-soft, drawing colors from worn strings that expensive instruments spend decades trying to develop. Dr. Morgan sits transfixed in the third row, her 72 years of musical experience recognizing artistry that can't be bought or taught. Around her, advanced students, children of doctors and lawyers with trust funds and European summer programs, grip their pristine instrument cases with suddenly sweaty palms. Their confidence, built on a foundation of privilege and proper breeding, evaporates like morning dew under direct sunlight. The concertmaster of the Detroit Symphony, Helen Morrison, occupies a back row seat she'd assumed would offer easy escape from this mandatory charity performance. In 32 years of professional music making, she's heard Bach's Partita performed by Itzhak Perlman, Hilary Hahn, and Joshua Bell. International soloists who command six-figure fees and fill concert halls worldwide. But this 12-year-old boy with his father's violin is revealing something she's never encountered in all her years of professional excellence. Music that emerges from necessity rather than privilege. Sound that serves survival instead of showcasing expensive education. Art born from hunger instead of comfort. Devon's body moves with the phrases like trees swaying in wind only he can feel. His shoulders relax into a natural position that allows maximum bow speed without sacrificing control. His left elbow rotates with fluid motion that facilitates impossible position shifts, techniques that conservatory students spend semesters perfecting through repetitive exercises. He learned these movements through trial and error in apartments where practicing disturbed neighbors who worked night shifts and slept during school hours. Every technique refined through necessity, polished by dreams that couldn't afford formal instruction but demanded excellence anyway. The crack along his violin's back seems to sing with its own voice, adding character that new instruments require decades to develop. Wood aged by time and use creates harmonics that money cannot purchase. The slight buzz from worn strings adds texture that perfectly maintained instruments lack. Imperfection transformed into personality through devotion and daily use. Professor Whitmore stands frozen behind his mahogany podium, Italian leather shoes rooted to marble floors, his carefully constructed worldview crumbling like an ancient manuscript exposed to sunlight. This isn't supposed to be happening in his academy, under his watch, challenging his fundamental assumptions about musical excellence. Scholarship students from housing projects don't navigate Bach's mathematical complexities with this level of sophistication. They struggle with basic intonation. They rush through difficult passages to hide technical limitations. They compensate for inadequate training with enthusiasm that sounds impressive to untrained ears, but reveals fundamental gaps under professional scrutiny. This boy isn't compensating for anything. He's revealing truths that conservatory training sometimes obscures. The third movement approaches like gathering storm clouds on an emotional horizon. Sarabande, Bach's meditation on loss, longing, and the spaces between notes that contain entire universes of human experience. Professional violinists spend their careers learning to navigate its emotional depths without drowning in sentiment or freezing from technical demands. Graduate students at major conservatories dedicate months to mastering its deceptive simplicity. The melody moves slowly, creating an illusion of ease while hiding trapdoors and landmines that destroy unprepared performers. Every note must be perfect. Every phrase must serve a larger architectural purpose. Every silence must speak with eloquence equal to sound. Devon pauses for a heartbeat before beginning, bow suspended above strings like conductor's baton frozen at moment of revelation. Complete silence engulfs the hall. 30 people hold breath collectively, creating a vacuum of anticipation that makes crystal chandeliers seem to dim with expectation. In that suspended moment, everyone present realizes they're witnessing something that will change them, something they'll remember when hair turns gray and memories fade. something their grandchildren will hear about in stories that begin, "I was there the day." The sarabande flows like liquid prayer poured from vessels older than cathedrals. Devon's bow moves across strings with touch so delicate it seems to caress rather than play, drawing sound through love rather than force. Each note carries emotional weight that seems impossible for 12-year-old shoulders to bear. His father's dreams, his mother's sacrifices, his own burning need to prove that greatness recognizes no zip code or bank account balance. The melody unfolds in waves of emotion that wash over marble walls like a tide against ancient shores. Devon's vibrato, learned through trial and error in spaces too small for proper acoustics, creates colors that conservatory students spend fortunes trying to master. His phrasing breathes with natural rhythm that comes from understanding music as language rather than mathematics, communication rather than competition. Tears appear in unexpected places throughout the hall. Helen Morrison's professional composure cracks as moisture gathers in eyes that have remained dry through decades of beautiful performances. Dr. Morgan grips her program with hands that tremble slightly, recognizing artistry that validates every risk she took founding this academy 40 years ago. Even some advanced students forget their jealousy and social positioning long enough to recognize genius when it slaps them across their privileged faces. Sarah Wellington, whose father owns half of downtown Detroit, stares at her own violin case with newfound humility. Marcus Carter, son of the symphony's concertmaster, questions everything he thought he knew about musical hierarchy. But the sarabande represents only the calm before the storm that's coming. The final movement, Gega, explodes into the hall like controlled lightning channeled through wood and steel. Bach's perpetual motion machine demands technical precision that separates conservatory graduates from weekend hobbyists. Double stops require two notes played simultaneously. Position shifts that happen faster than conscious thought. Bow techniques that distinguish professionals from pretenders with surgical accuracy. Devon launches into the giga like someone possessed by angels and demons simultaneously, his left hand flying across the fingerboard in movements so rapid they blur like hummingbird wings. Position changes that should require months of careful practice happen with fluid precision that makes conservatory professors weep with professional envy. The music builds like tornado winds gathering strength from flat prairie, each phrase more technically demanding than the last. Devon's bow dances across strings with impossible speed while maintaining complete control of dynamics and articulation. His breathing synchronizes with the music's natural pulse, transforming physical exertion into spiritual transcendence that elevates everyone present. Around the hall, jaws drop like autumn leaves surrendering to gravity. Faculty members scribble frantic notes that will become legendary stories told at dinner parties for decades. Board members lean forward with expressions usually reserved for natural disasters or religious experiences. Advanced students stare at their expensive instruments with newly discovered humility, understanding for the first time that money cannot purchase souls. Professor Whitmore grips his podium like a drowning man clinging to driftwood in ocean storms, his knuckles white as his privilege, watching everything he believed about musical excellence dissolve like sugar in acid rain. The final note of Bach's giga sustains in perfect silence that feels alive, electric, pregnant with transformation. Devon's bow remains poised above strings, still vibrating with echoes of impossible beauty, his chest rising and falling with exertion that transcends physical effort and enters spiritual territory. For 10 heartbeats, nobody moves, nobody breathes, nobody dares disturb what just occurred. Crystal chandeliers seem frozen in time. Marble columns stand as silent witnesses to genius unveiled. Even the air feels different, charged with electricity that happens when paradigms shift and assumptions crumble like ancient walls under modern artillery. Devon slowly lowers his violin, eyes still closed as if afraid that opening them might shatter the spell he's woven from wood and steel and 3 years of impossible dreams. His father's instrument settles against his side like a faithful companion returning from battle, its crack-lined back bearing witness to magic that money cannot purchase. The silence stretches beyond comfort, into territory where miracles live. Then it begins. A single pair of hands breaks the spell, slow, deliberate clapping that cuts through perfumed air like church bells announcing resurrection. Helen Morrison, concertmaster of the Detroit Symphony, rises from her back row seat with tears streaming down cheeks that have remained dry through decades of professional excellence. Her applause grows from whisper to thunder, each clap echoing off marble walls with increasing intensity. One by one, others join the revolution. Dr. Morgan stands next, her 72 years of musical experience, recognizing artistry that validates every risk she's ever taken. Her applause carries 40 years of believing that talent recognizes no economic boundaries, that genius emerges from necessity as often as privilege. Faculty members rise like dominoes, falling in reverse. Dr. Richards, who studied under masters at Juilliard, claps with hands that shake from witnessing something that will redefine his understanding of musical education. Professor Carter abandons her professional composure entirely, applause mixing with tears she didn't know were possible. Even the advanced students, trust fund children who arrived expecting entertainment at Devon's expense, find themselves standing despite their designer clothes and inherited assumptions. Sarah Wellington's applause carries newfound humility. Marcus Carter claps while staring at his own expensive violin case with questions that will haunt him for years. Board members abandon their phones and social hierarchies, caught in a tide of recognition that sweeps through the hall like wildfire through dried timber. These pillars of Detroit society, who measure worth in donations and tax write-offs, find themselves applauding a 12-year-old boy whose family can't afford new violin strings. The ovation builds like storm systems gathering strength from warm ocean waters. 30 people on their feet, applauding with increasing intensity. Voices beginning to join the celebration with bravos and magnificence that echo off acoustic perfection designed for such moments. But one person remains seated, frozen in his mahogany cage of privilege and prejudice. Professor Malcolm Whitmore sits behind his podium like a statue carved from shame and shattered assumptions. His face cycles through expressions that tell their own story. Disbelief melting into shock, shock hardening into grudging recognition, recognition dissolving into something approaching horror as he realizes what he's done, what he's said, what 30 witnesses have seen him become. His perfectly styled silver hair seems less perfect now. His expensive blazer feels like a costume from a play where he's miscast as villain in his own story. The gold watch that measures time suddenly seems to tick too loudly, marking moments he cannot take back, words that will follow him through whatever remains of his career. The applause reaches a crescendo that threatens to lift the coffered ceiling. Devon opens his eyes, blinking in chandeliers that seem brighter now, looking out at faces transformed from skeptical to stunned to celebrating. The borrowed shirt that hung too loose now looks purposeful. The scuffed shoes that squeaked against marble now seem to belong on this stage. Dr. Morgan approaches through the standing ovation, her expression mixing tears with triumph. She reaches Devon as the applause begins to fade, placing gentle hands on shoulders that just carried impossible weight with impossible grace. The hall gradually settles into expectant silence, everyone waiting for words that might capture what they've witnessed. Devon looks directly at Professor Whitmore, still seated behind his podium of diminished authority. His young voice carries across the marble space with quiet dignity that cuts deeper than any shout. "Thank you for the audition, Professor. I hope my kind of music meets your standards." The mic drop moment lands like an earthquake in reverse, not destroying but rebuilding, not tearing down but raising up everything that matters while exposing everything that doesn't. The aftershock of Devon's words ripples through the marble hall like stones thrown into still water. Professor Whitmore sits frozen behind his podium, his face cycling through shades of mortification that expensive makeup cannot conceal. Around him, 30 witnesses to his humiliation wear expressions ranging from shocked silence to barely concealed satisfaction. But Devon Carter, 12 years old and holding his father's battle-scarred violin, has already moved beyond revenge into something more powerful. Grace. Helen Morrison, concertmaster of the Detroit Symphony, approaches the stage with tears still fresh on her cheeks. Her 32 years of professional music-making have exposed her to child prodigies, conservatory graduates, and international soloists. But what she just witnessed transcends categories and shatters assumptions about where greatness lives. "Young man," she begins, her voice trembling with emotion that surprises everyone, including herself. "That was the most honest music I've heard in 20 years, the most truthful Bach I've ever experienced." She extends a business card with hands that shake slightly. "How would you feel about performing with our youth orchestra this summer? We have a concert at Orchestra Hall in July. I think Detroit needs to hear what you have to say." Devon accepts the card like it's made of gold leaf and ancient promises. Orchestra Hall, where Itzhak Perlman and Yo-Yo Ma have performed. Where his father once dreamed of playing but never dared believe was possible. Dr. Elizabeth Morgan materializes beside Devon like a fairy godmother stepping from shadows into the spotlight. Her 72 years move with energy borrowed from witnessing miracles unfold in her own academy. The founder of Eastwood reaches into her briefcase and withdraws an envelope bearing the school's embossed seal. "Mr. Carter," she announces, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "consider your scholarship approved. Full tuition, room and board, private lessons with our master faculty, and summer master classes in Vienna." She pauses, letting the magnitude settle. "We're also establishing a new program, the Marcus Carter Memorial Scholarship for students who demonstrate that musical excellence recognizes no economic boundaries." Devon's vision blurs as his father's name echoes through marble corridors that seemed impossible to enter just 30 minutes ago. Marcus Carter, construction worker who died at 39 with dreams unfulfilled but not forgotten, will live forever in these halls dedicated to musical excellence. Advanced students approach hesitantly, their designer clothes and expensive instruments no longer providing comfort or confidence. Sarah Wellington, daughter of Detroit's most prominent real estate developer, extends a perfectly manicured hand. "I'm sorry about—" She gestures vaguely toward Professor Whitmore, still frozen in his chair. "That was wrong. All of it." Her voice carries genuine shame. "Would you like to sit with us at lunch? I'd love to hear more about how you learned to play like that." Marcus Carter, son of the symphony's concertmaster, clutches his pristine violin case with new understanding. "My mom's been trying to teach me Bach for 2 years, he admits. I thought it was about hitting every note perfectly. You showed me it's about something else entirely." Faculty members surround Devon like scholars discovering ancient manuscripts that rewrite history. Dr. Richards scribbles notes furiously, already composing curriculum changes that will emphasize emotional truth alongside technical perfection. Professor Anderson, the Academy's composition teacher, sees future collaborations with students who understand that music serves expression rather than exhibition. Board members who arrived expecting brief charity theater now discuss expanded outreach programs with enthusiasm typically reserved for tax benefits. Mrs. Hamilton, whose family foundation supports arts education, approaches Dr. Morgan with a checkbook already opened. "Elizabeth, what would it cost to identify 50 more Devon Carters across Detroit? 100? I want them found, funded, and flourishing." But the most profound transformation occurs in the corner where Professor Malcolm Whitmore finally rises from his chair like a man emerging from an underwater cave. His expensive suit hangs differently now, as if tailored for someone else. His gold watch ticks too loudly in halls that seem to echo with his shame. He approaches Devon slowly, each step on marble floors sounding like heartbeats in cathedral silence. 30 pairs of eyes follow his progress, waiting to witness either redemption or further descent into irrelevance. "Mr. Carter," he begins, his voice stripped of its earlier authority, replaced by something raw and uncomfortably honest. "I owe you an apology. Not just for today, but for every assumption I've made, every student I've underestimated, every dream I've dismissed because it didn't arrive in packaging I recognized." He extends his hand, not the brief dismissive contact from earlier, but genuine offering of respect between musicians. "I've taught for 30 years, believing I understood musical excellence. You've just shown me I've been teaching technique while ignoring the truth." His voice cracks slightly. Perhaps you could teach this old professor something about listening with his heart instead of his prejudices." Devon accepts the handshake with dignity that shames everyone present. His grip is firm, his eyes direct, his forgiveness instant and complete. "Music belongs to everyone who needs it, Professor. Maybe we can help each other remember that." 6 months later, Devon Carter performed Bach's Partita No. 2 with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, his father's violin singing in harmony with instruments worth more than houses. In the front row sits his mother, Claudia, wearing a new dress bought with money earned from proper hours instead of desperation. Beside her, Professor Malcolm Whitmore applauds with tears streaming down his face, transformed from critic to champion, from gatekeeper to guide. 2 years later, Devon Carter stands on the stage at Carnegie Hall, his father's violin gleaming under lights that have illuminated the world's greatest musicians. The crack along its back has been professionally repaired but left visible, a reminder that beauty often emerges from brokenness, that scars tell stories worth preserving. In the audience, Claudia Carter wipes tears from eyes that have seen her son transform from project kid to international sensation. Beside her sits Professor Malcolm Whitmore, now director of Eastwood Academy's Marcus Carter Memorial Program, which has identified and nurtured 47 young musicians from Detroit's forgotten neighborhoods. The program that began with one boy's impossible dream now sends children to conservatories worldwide. Sarah Wellington manages its fundraising, having discovered that privilege finds purpose when it serves talent instead of itself. Marcus Carter teaches violin to elementary students, understanding finally that technique without soul is just noise in expensive packaging. Dr. Morgan, now 84, watches from her wheelchair with satisfaction that comes from witnessing institutional change sparked by individual courage. Eastwood Academy's demographics have shifted dramatically. 40% of students now receive full scholarships, chosen not for their family connections, but for their musical fire. Devon's performance that night, Bach's Partita No. 2, naturally, carries the same authenticity that shocked the Academy's marble halls. But now it reaches thousands instead of 30, broadcast worldwide to audiences hungry for stories that prove talent recognizes no boundaries, that dreams defer but never truly die. The standing ovation lasts 12 minutes. Critics call it transcendent. Social media explodes with hashtags like #TalentHasNoAddress and #MusicIsForEveryone. But the real victory happened years earlier, in a concert hall where prejudice met perseverance and lost spectacularly. Talent doesn't check your zip code before it chooses you. Genius doesn't require permission from gatekeepers who mistake privilege for potential. Excellence emerges from necessity as often as comfort, from struggle as much as silver spoons. Devon Carter didn't just play violin that day in Eastwood Academy's Marble Hall. He played the symphony of human potential, reminding everyone present that greatness lives in the most unexpected places, waiting for courage to give it voice. How many Devon Carters walk among us right now, carrying gifts the world is too prejudiced to recognize? How many dreams die not from lack of talent, but from lack of opportunity, belief, or simple human decency? Perhaps it's time we started listening with our hearts instead of our assumptions. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's ever been underestimated. Subscribe for more tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, because next week we're featuring the janitor who revolutionized rocket science with nothing but curiosity and a library card. Hit that notification bell. The world is full of Devon Carters waiting for their moment to shine, and they're about to change everything.